Hi everybody, I'm Ava Takenaka, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about my summer that was spent developing, this title is a mouthful, immunoelectroanalysis for differential stroke diagnosis, which I was basically working on a biosensor for stroke diagnosis, and this was the project that I was working on specifically at the lab. So I'm going to just start off with an overview of some internship details. So I was in Oviedo, Spain, which is a really small city in the north of Spain, at the University of Oviedo. And the professor I was working for was Dr. Teresa Fernandez, and she was so amazing. She's in this picture in the bottom left corner down here. And then the PhD student I was working with, his name was Pablo, and he was so awesome in teaching me everything that I need to know. The photos on here at the bottom are from the lab. You can kind of see the lab here, and these are some paper-based electrodes that I was working with. So I just wanted to throw that in because that was a big focus of my work this summer. These are some photos I have. I thought they would be fun to include, just so you can see kind of where I was and what it was like. On the far left, this is a picture of a little beach town that was about a 30-minute bus ride from Oviedo. And I would just go there after work if I had time or on weekends, and I would go sit by the water and explore that little city. The middle is a picture of Oviedo from kind of the center of the downtown. And the bottom left of that picture, that's the Central Park they had, which was just beautiful, like the biggest trees you've ever seen. Like I would sit there and read and drink coffee, and when I had like time, and then I just thought it was pretty. And then this is the cathedral that's in the historic downtown. So yeah. Getting into my research, so the overall idea of the lab was to develop a biosensor for differential stroke diagnosis. So what they were going to do is take a patient sample, like a little COVID nose swab, plop it in the device, and it would flow through and be able to tell whether they had an ischemic or hemorrhagic stroke. So my work was focused on the vertical flow, optimizing vertical flow, doing electroanalysis, immunoassays, all for that protein detection. So as you can see, my project was broken down into 3 parts, and it has big scary names, but it really was, it's understandable once we get into it more. So the first thing I did was work on the immunoassays, which are like ELISAs. That's what they're called. So I performed 2 ELISAs, one with blocking buffer and one with washing buffer. So basically, the difference between these 2 solutions is the presence of bovine serum albumin, BSA, which we wanted to look at the impact that would have on protein detection because that's a protein. Also, I can't see the Teams page, so if anyone has questions, just leave them in the chat. But yeah, I was testing which would work better, and we ended up learning that the washing buffer worked just as well, if not better, than the blocking buffer, which had BSA in it. So we just went ahead and continued doing experiments using the washing buffer just so that there would be no errors in protein detection, so that when the device is really being used, there is accurate protein content coming from the patient and not being like messed up. The immunoassay wouldn't mess anything up. Then I moved on to testing the electrodes. So in the far left, these images here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but those are literally paper strips that I was testing. I did some flow tests on those. So the top one here, these lines were drawn on with a hydrophobic pen, and this is literally melted wax crayons, and this is water. So I dropped water on it to see what would stop the flow better, and it ended up being the wax crayons, because when it's time to use the real paper-based electrode, we didn't want any of the solution to damage the electrical components, so the device wouldn't be able to be used. So wax crayons worked best for this experiment. And then I performed some electrochemical testing, which is what cyclic voltammetry is, on screen-printed electrodes and paper-based electrodes. Screen-printed electrodes are just like plastic electrodes like this big, and then paper-based is the exact same thing, just made with paper. And basically, I was just testing to see how they would work in comparison here. Evidently, they both work the same. And honestly, the paper-based electrodes were even more sensitive when I was doing electrochemical testing, which is awesome because we want it to be able to be sensitive to proteins, and we want it to work and all of these things. So this experiment went well. Paper-based electrodes work well for the device. So yeah, that was my electrochemical testing. I also did vertical flow optimization. So I was working on the device. Ideally, a sample will be dropped in here, and it'll flow through the various layers of the device. The immunoassay will be completed, and then it'll be able to, like, the results will be read on like a little mobile device, ideally. So with this, I was messing around with sample pad and absorbent pad thicknesses to see what would work better for flow and just timing. And I have some results here. These were on screen printed electrodes, the results. And I believe the best ones from my memory were thick at 75 microliters of volume. And then I think a thin thick. Let me see here. Yeah, so these ones were the ones that worked best. We didn't want it to go, oh yeah, a thin, thick. Thick, thin, thick. We didn't want them to go too fast. The ones on this right here, the results in red and orange, the timing of that was too fast, and we wanted the sample to be properly read, which is why here, these lines of pink and purple worked best. And then I performed the same testing on the paper-based electrodes, and there were multiple layer combinations that worked well, which is good. So honestly, when the time comes to build the final device, my lab will have 4 different combinations of what worked well and what they can use. So that was the main focus of my research. I also want to mention, I didn't put this in the slides, I got to spend 2 weeks at the local hospital taking real patient samples, so that when the time comes when they have their finalized device, they have real patient samples. So I was following around neurologists and neurosurgeons, watching them take patient samples, interacting with real patients who had stroke, and it was really amazing to see the people that we were building a medical device to help, and it really gave me a well-rounded perspective on my summer and on the work I was doing, and how important biomedical engineering is. Lastly, I'll touch on my personal experience. So I was in Europe all summer, and with that I did some traveling on the weekends. Yeah, personally, I really enjoyed the travel. The solo travel was amazing. I grew a lot in my independence because I did everything alone. I was taking planes, taxis, booking hotels. I was just wandering around alone. And it was a really interesting experience. I definitely got over a lot of anxiety in doing that. So this is a picture of Oviedo. This is some from, we have Madrid, Barcelona, Mallorca, Paris. These 2 pictures on the far right are actually from the hospital that I spent time at, which was awesome. Yeah, it was an amazing experience. And I think another big takeaway I got was to take risks. This summer, I sacrificed a lot of time, and it was a risk to go at 19 to another country to do research, but it was amazing. I think it was really good for my career, for my professional and personal growth, and it's something that I wouldn't change for the world. And I added new cultures. I loved being immersed in Spanish culture and learning some of their language and trying the foods and just how they live and work. I thought it was really interesting, and it's different from American culture, and it's something that I really grew to love and appreciate. So yes, I think this was my last slide, but I do want to just add on, I have a slide for Q&A, but I'll look at the questions after. I wanted to just say thank you, especially to the Science Influencers program. This summer would not have been possible without the belief of the professors here and without the funding and their teaching me on how to communicate and how to share. My life was truly changed, and I wouldn't be able to do this without this program. So I just wanted to express my gratitude to you guys, and thank you for that. And thank you guys so much for listening.